You're on Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez. Our guest for the hour is Michelle Alexander. Her book is called The New Jim Crow, Mass Incarceration in the Age of Colorblindness. It actually came out a few years ago, but it has taken this country by storm. San Francisco Chronicle called it the Bible of a social movement. Cornell West, an instant classic. Even Forbes magazine called it devastating. And the New York Review of Books said Alexander deserves to be compared to Du Bois in her ability to distill and lay out as mighty human drama a complex argument and history. This is a transformative book. Juan?
Well, part of the Justice Department's investigation in Ferguson focused on traffic stops. It found African Americans, who account for about 2/3 of the city's population, made up 85% of traffic stops, 90% of citations, 93% of arrests, and 88% of cases in which police used force. African American drivers were twice as likely as whites to be searched, but were less likely to be found with drugs or guns than whites. And in all 14 incidents in which a police dog bit the suspect, the person's race is known. The person bitten was African American. The findings reinforce details of a class action lawsuit filed by Ferguson residents who accuse local officials of creating a modern debtor's prison scheme that targets African Americans with arrests and fines and then locks them up when they can't pay. Here on Democracy Now! We spoke with Herbert Nelson Jr., a plaintiff in the lawsuit who's been arrested multiple times. He was asked how his experience made him feel about the police.
That's a good question, because the last time I was arrested, the officer said I shouldn't be afraid of officers. But that same officer, he actually, he was like, yes, and he was so excited to arrest me. And that alone made me afraid, because a lot of my friends and family won't even come to see me because I live in Jennings. They're scared to come into the county of North St. Louis, because North County, St. Louis, because of the police and how quick they are to arrest you over minor traffic tickets.
Herbert, when we were there, there was some hope among some residents that we spoke to that things might get better in the aftermath of these protests, of this organizing in Ferguson and the surrounding areas. Has anything improved in the 6 months since Michael Brown was killed?
Far as the policing, no, it hasn't. It hasn't. No, I wouldn't honestly say it has improved. No, it actually got worse, because it seems like the crime has went up, and the police are really, the jails are just running in and out like they way more packed than they were before Mike Brown was shot. The jails are way more packed, so they haven't improved at all.
So that's Herbert Nelson Jr., who is a plaintiff in this lawsuit, who's been arrested multiple times. He was sitting next to her sister, Allison. One of her arrests, it's their mother, who comes constantly to the jail to give money. One of her arrests was being in the car with a suspended license. The problem was she was in her backyard in a parked car, just sitting inside. And for that, she was taken away. So Michelle Alexander brought in this story from arrests to what they're calling modern-day debtors' prisons.
Yes, you know, I think this is part of the story that many people are unaware of, the ways in which poor people, particularly poor folks of color, are targeted by our criminal justice system, arrested for extremely minor offenses, the very sorts of crimes that occur with equal frequency in middle-class communities or on college campuses, but go largely ignored, targeted, arrested or cited, and then saddled with fines and fees that are nearly impossible for them to pay back. Then warrants are issued for their arrest, for failure to appear in court or to pay back their fees or fines in a timely manner, leading them into a system from which they have little hope of ever truly escaping. And, you know, we can look back in history and see this is not the first time we've done something like this. Slavery by Another Name is an important book that I think all Americans should read, about how following the end of slavery, a new system of racial and social control was born, known as convict leasing. You know, after the end of slavery, you know, African American men were arrested in mass masse. And they were arrested for extremely minor crimes like loitering, standing around, vagrancy, or the equivalent of jaywalking, arrested, and then sent to prison and then leased to plantations. And the idea was they were supposed to earn their freedom, but they could never pay back the plantation owners or the corporations the costs of their clothing and shelter, and so they were effectively re-enslaved, sometimes for the rest of their lives. And today we see millions of poor people and folks of color who are trapped yet again in a criminal justice system, which are treating them like commodities and like people who are easily disposable.
And the impact of this, not only for those who, let's say, are jailed and then lose their voting rights for a period of time, but even for those who are arrested and then this stays on their record, and then the issue of being able to get a job with your arrest record available to employers now with databases being able to locate any kind of information, the impact of this on the ability of African Americans and other people of color to be able to have some kind of social mobility and move forward.
That's absolutely right. I hear people often say, oh, well, come on, it's just a misdemeanor. It's not that big of a deal. It's not like they have a felony. Well, today, a misdemeanor can show up on your record through, a few keystrokes on a computer by an employer, and it can be the reason that you're denied an opportunity to work. It can also be the reason you're denied access to housing. Public housing officials are free to discriminate against you on the basis of criminal records, including arrest records. And so, what you find is that even for these extremely minor offenses, people find themselves trapped in a permanent second-class status and struggling to survive. So I think it's critically important that we not dismiss these kinds of, charges that are being brought against folks as being minor and shrug them off. No, they can actually alter the course of one's life.